Auburn, per this report from Pete Nakos, one of the biggest spenders in the transfer portal this past cycle. Now, something tells me if you're spending money in the portal, you're probably also spending money in other areas of your football program, also areas of your roster when it comes to retention or the high school level. Auburn's sitting at a point right now where they have a top 10 portal class and a top 10 recruiting class. Now, don't look now, but Auburn is doing things that we said during the Brian Harsin era they needed to do. What was the big pushback during Brian Harsin's time at Auburn? I don't mean to put the guy out here on blast, but let's just talk about it because it's relevant here. Everyone was very much so, everyone was very bearish on Brian Harsin, at least in Auburn circles. Nobody was sitting here telling themselves, hey, Auburn can't play ball. Man, if Auburn could just get some resources. Nobody was saying that. Why? Because it wasn't true. The thing that you were talking about in relation to Auburn was always around the idea of, well, can they get aligned? Can the powers that be, the boosters and whoever else with money, get on the same page as the people in that football building and pull in the same direction? Because if they can do that, Auburn's pretty dangerous. Auburn brand's got some power. Again, the resources in general, they got them in-house. To win at the highest level, Auburn's got them. And so for that to be the reality now, with how they're acquiring talent at the portal level and the high school level, it comes down to me, what do you question about Auburn? Like, what are you waiting to see? Do you not believe that they're adding the right guys? Based on these rankings, I think that's probably a tough train for me to get on. Do you not believe in Hugh Freeze? This is where some people will differ in their opinion. I believe in Hugh Freeze. I do. I mean, having been down there, sat down and talked to him, seen how they do things out there on the plains behind closed doors, I believe in the processes and things that are happening internally that we don't see on Saturdays just yet that Auburn is doing. And so just because you haven't seen them yet doesn't mean you're not still going to have some fruits of your labor. That's kind of where I think Auburn's at right now. You do the right things enough times, at some point in time, the right place and right time will eventually find you. Now, this conversation is probably an interesting one to have after this season of, well, how much time do you have to find the right time? You would hope there's something you can put on the field this year if you're Hugh Freeze to give yourself more time. Not saying he's on the hot seat, but I do think people are saying, hey, want to see some results, and that's fair. But notice why Auburn is going to the portal as heavily as they are. In the last 3 cycles, Auburn has taken over 50 guys via the portal. Why do you go to the transfer portal? To fix your roster. Why do you fix a roster if it's not in a good spot? Not a good enough spot, I suppose. Hugh Freeze has been saying for a long time, whether you believe him or not, the roster is not in a good enough spot. And so for them to now be balling the way they're balling on the recruiting trail, balling the way they're balling on the transfer portal side, I think that there's some reason for optimism if you're Auburn. Now, you got to see it to believe it, obviously, but go out and land an Eric Singleton, go get a Jackson Arnold. I think Auburn can and should have a lot of confidence in what they're doing from a resources side to how it's translating to the roster side. The last piece of the puzzle here is if they can win some ball games. And last thing I'll say here, if you're Auburn, like, isn't that kind of just the last thing that could set all this off? Won 5 games last year, still had a top 10 class. What if they win 8 games? If they win 9 games next year? I think that would only help recruiting. You're telling me resources isn't an issue for them. So Auburn, with the top 10 class, the alignment of it all is what really should be, and I think is exciting for the folks out there on the plains.